All right, Alice, I hope I have us in the picture. So, I got to come to Canada this weekend to stay with my dear friend Alice. She's now 95 years old, and we're going to learn how Alice got to Canada.
Oh, yes.
So we'll tell the story together to understand how Alice, who was born in Poland, got to Alberta. So tell us, Alice, when you were born.
I'm born April 24, no, in year 1924, April 10.
And what country were you born in?
I was born in Poland, in Europe.
But you weren't Polish.
No, I was German.
And I understand that the reason you lived in Poland was because in the 1700s, your great-grandfather, who was a tradesman, had a good opportunity if he went to work in Poland, so he moved there in the 1700s.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
And he met a lady, and she became his girlfriend, and they married, and they came then to, that was in, where he was working in Poland. It was Eastern Poland.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they stayed there for a while, but then they had children, and then the children moved closer to us in what should I say? Ilof.
Oh, the more western side of Poland.
Yeah, they moved more to the west,
Okay.
And they had children, and then from these children, my grandfather, he was born, and his name was Albert Sprengel. And Albert Sprengel is my grandfather, the father of my father. And so that's how we got to Poland.
And your father's name was Otto.
Otto, yeah. And he had two brothers.
Randall?
No, just a minute. My father had two brothers, but the youngest died, and my father was Otto and Robert.
Robert, okay, Robert and Otto, and the other brother died.
Died, yeah, when he was maybe in the teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your mother's name was?
Aurelia.
And tell me your great-grandmother's name that married your great-grandfather, Fernando. What was her name?
Her name was Rosalia Bonkowska. She was Polish.
Okay. So Alice told me she really enjoyed living on a small farm in Poland. Her grandpa had a larger farm, and he split it into 8 parts to divide between his children.
Yeah.
And so her father had a small farm, and she enjoyed the many animals that were on that small farm. And he was a forest ranger. So that was what he did mainly, was working in the forest, but he also had this small farm, and they lived on the Wisła River. Is that how you say it?
What was that?
What was the name of the river?
Oh, Wisła.
Wisła.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the largest, stream, you say, in Poland.
Okay, the largest stream in Poland. And what was the name of the little town you lived in?
Ilof, but it's in Polish Iłów.
Now, that was a little further away, right? Wasn't there another, the one you lived right in the tiny place on the river? I can't say the name of the town.
Iłów, that was the next town
Oh, yes,
Of,
the next
yeah.
one. Yes.
Yeah.
And what was the one right where you were? It's this
Archikov.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That was not a town. That was well, what do you say? There were farmers. Now I'm not sure. I think there were 18 farmers,
Oh,
and that place with the 18 farmers, they called it Archikov.
okay. Just a small little area on the
Yeah.
river.
Yeah.
And then I understand that you were an only child, but when you were 10, you got a 5-year-old sister who
Yeah.
was really your cousin.
Yes. Yeah, and till now, we are like sisters. She is in a senior home, and I'm still live in my home here in Edmonton.
And your sister moved in with you because she lost both of her parents.
What was it?
Your sister lost both of her parents.
Yes, she lost. Yeah, she lost both of her parents. They had typhoid fever, and since she was taken from her grandmother to their place, so my dad, I said, Dad, let us go and get Martha. So I have a sister, and we went one evening to her grandma, and she was there, and we took her home, and since then she was in our home, and we lived like my sisters. Till now, we call ourselves sisters.
And so then you told me in your early years in Poland, Alice, that you went to Polish schools.
Yeah.
However, World War II began and things started to change.
Yeah.
And then you began to receive a private education from a man named Milka,
But,
and he was teaching you German.
yeah.
And Alice
Milke, yeah.
Milke.
Yeah.
Okay, I never can get the name straight.
Yeah.
And you were able to complete 10 years of schooling, and near the end of her schooling, she began to work in a governmental office as a clerk,
Yeah.
where she cared for legal documents,
Yeah.
like birth certificates, marriages, deaths. She took care of those kinds of documents.
Yeah.
And during this time, she took a course in typing and a course in shorthand to learn the skills she needed for the job. And Alice tells me she was her boss's favorite employee.
Yes.
And so when he would go to the Lord's place, which is a large, very large house, I guess, or an estate.
And we had 5 Lord's places in our area there.
In your area, you
yeah.
have.
In the Ilov area.
Okay, and they were very wealthy people where the poor people would come and work for these lords. And when he had to go there to do business, he would always pick Alice as the one that went with him.
Yes.
And Alice didn't know it then, but this job would later put her in a safe position, and it was one of the beginning times of where she really could see God's leading as she looked back to save her life through the difficult war times. And as the war progressed, it became increasingly difficult for the Germans to live in Poland, because both the Russians and the Polish people hated the Germans.
Yes.
And so you told me a story about what they did one time with your father when they gathered up some men because they were Germans. Can you tell that story of what happened?
Like
when they got the 100 men and
oh, well, the Polish people, I mean, mostly the government, not all Polish people, they hated the Germans, so the government there in that small village, they gathered 100 fathers. Mostly the fathers from the family, and they were going to take them to a place which was named Garbolin, and that was east of our town. I don't know, maybe 100 miles away. I forget how far it was.
It looked like it was about 120 kilometers.
That could be, yeah, because I forget. And but my dad was too taken, and when they were walking day and night, and that was a night my dad was, he thought, what will I do? I can't go that far, because they didn't know what would happen when they go to Garberlin. My dad thought, no, that's no good. I have to escape. So at night, when they were walking, my dad rolled into a ditch and stayed there until it was next day. And then he came home, and we had to hide him.
You had to hide him.
And these people which were taking to Garberlin, they got all killed there.
But your father was spared.
My father was alive, yeah.
But then in 1945, Alice's father was drafted into the war as a German soldier. And they didn't hear from him and didn't know what happened to him, but later they learned that he had been captured by the Russian army and he was taken to Siberia as a war prisoner and was treated as a slave. This was the second time he had been taken as a prisoner to Siberia. And soon after Alice's father was drafted into the war, her sister Martha was taken to German youth school.
Yeah.
And they didn't know where Martha was either.
No.
That left Alice and her mother, and they knew they needed to get out of Poland. They got their horse and their wagon, and along with a group of people, they began their escape.
Yeah.
It was very hard to leave, and they were able only to leave with the clothes on their back.
That's right.
And what was the hardest to leave, Alice? You told me what was very hard to leave?
My dog at home, it was the hardest thing. I loved him so much, and my other animals, you know.
She said she can remember how her little dog looked, and his name was Tober.
Yeah.
But he couldn't come, and she asked a Polish man who lived next door to please take all the animals.
Yes.
But you know, all these years later, Alice can see Tober's face in her mind. Well, they didn't get very far before they were captured by the Polish army. And when they were captured, they were taken to a concentration camp where they had little to eat and they had to work as slaves. Alice was taken each day to clean house for a lady.
Mm-hmm.
But very soon after, well, actually there's a story that took place when you were cleaning house for that lady. Can you tell us what happened when the Russian soldier came to that lady's house?
Well, he said, we have to take your German girl with us. And she said, no.
The lady you were working for said, no, you can't
No,
take
you
her.
can't, because I took her out of the camp and I have to keep her. But that Russian officer, he had a pistol in his hand. He said to me, he said, I will shoot you. They killed my girl in Russia, and I will kill you. And I was not afraid because I wanted to die.
You said you thought that dying would be better than where he was going to take you, so you just said, no, go ahead and shoot me.
Yeah, that's right. And then the pistol fell out of his hand, and he said, you come with me. And then I was really scared.
And he started to cry though, right? When the pistol fell, he started to cry.
Yeah, When the pistol fell, he started to cry, and then he took me under his arms and he said, "You come with me." And then I thought, I didn't know where I would take me, so I was very, very scared. But what he did, he took me to where
To a market?
it was
Or a bakery?
Bakery, yeah. And when we got there, he loaded my arm full of bread, and he took me back to the camp.
Loaded full of bread. And
That's
so
right.
Alice was able to take that bread back, and other people there were so hungry, and she couldn't believe that he first had said he was going to kill her, and instead he bought all this food for her. And again, God was watching over her.
Yes, yes, God was watching over me. It was a miracle.
Soon after being taken to the concentration camp, a police officer came and asked for Alice to work for him. And this police officer knew Alice from when she was a clerk in her prior job. And so, that's how that other job came into play, where she was protected because of the people she had met in that job.
Yeah.
And he took you right to his house.
Yes, he took me in, and I was so happy,
And he protected you.
Yes, the whole family, they were very, very good to me. I was just like their own daughter. And they had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. And the boy's name was Stephen, the other was Richard.
Oh.
And the daughter's name was, she had very, see now I forgot it. Anyway, that's why I was a girl, and she was very, very good to me too. And the whole family was very good to me. And when the Russian armies came and wanted to take me out, then he came, the Polish police sat beside my bed, and he said, "No, you won't take me out. You won't take my girl. That is my girl, and you are not touching her." And so they had to go, and I was safe.
And once again, she really was protected. And these Russian people in the army would take the women and rape them. And Alice had a friend, Edith, who this happened to.
Yeah, actually I had 2 friends, but the one, Edith, they used her. They used her, but the second one was Hedwig, and she became a child. I mean, she was pregnant, but not Edith.
Okay. And so who is the mother of the boy who lives in Australia today?
That was Edith.
Okay.
Yeah, until now her son is writing and phoning me every month once.
Oh, but that boy was not as a result of the Russian soldiers. Okay.
No.
Okay, that was your other friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Alice's mother was working for both an attorney and the police department at this time. And Alice's mother had a cousin that was a German and was drafted into the German army. He had married a Polish lady, and when he was returning from the army and was going to go home, he learned that the Polish people hated him so much they were going to kill him. He quickly left to save his life. And then, Alice, what happened when your mother was working?
Well, my mom worked at, she cleaned the police station there, and when she went to throw the what do you say, the
Some trash.
trash out, and she came out to the pile there, and there she seen her cousin laying there on the trash.
So she found her cousin that was escaping, laying dead in the trash pile, and they believe that the Polish police took him in and killed him because he was German.
Yeah.
So you can see that life was very bad for Germans who were living in Poland.
Yes.
And Alice and her mother were alone, but Alice's mother was a very industrious lady, and she began to make a plan of escape.
Yes.
So one thing, tell us about what it was in the concentration camp that your mother found that helped you be able to escape when she found the corset.
Pardon me?
The corset.
Oh, yeah. My mother, when we were in that place, my mom was always very cold, and she needed some more clothes, so she had a gorse. There was a pile old clothes, and she went and picked a corset to keep her warm around the bottom of her body, and not right away, but after it was so terribly tight, she thought, what is here? She started to open, and that was a piece of gold.
So sewn inside this corset, a corset that must have belonged to someone else that maybe was killed in the concentration camp.
Yeah.
She started to pull apart the corset to understand why it was uncomfortable, and she found not just one, but several gold pieces sewn inside the corset.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, just throughout, they could see that God was caring for them. And with one of these coins, she hired someone to take them secretly by boat from Poland to Germany.
That's right.
And what happened on the boat?
Well, actually, that boat was pulled from a little motorboat, and that was a sold. I think, I'm not sure if that was a Polish or a Russian little boat.
Pulling a whole bigger boat full of people trying to leave Poland.
They were mothers, and mostly no men, but mothers and children were. And so Mom and I were on that too. And as we were on the middle of that was belonged to the, well, I will show it to you on a map, I have where it was. And when we were on the middle of that water there, then that motorboat, he wanted to drown us, I guess, because he left us loose. And there came a big storm when we were swimming on it, and we were crying and praying on that boat. And I remember there came a storm, and that storm took us across that little pond, and that was not a little pond, but big water, and pushed us against the shore.
Yes. So they were left out there to drown, but a wind came and blew them right to the shore they needed to get to. And Alice said she remembers all the children crying, and then that she remembers there were people at the shore to help them. And throughout the story, Alice would say there were people there helping us.
Yes.
And they took them to a train station where she said they were there for a while to get dried because the storm was so bad that it was blowing water into the boat that they were floating in, and they thought they were going to drown. But they didn't. They got to the train station and they got dried off.
Yeah.
And Alice was not sure if it was at this train station, but she remembers being at a train station where she was very scared. And she knew that her life could always be in danger, and she remembers being told to hide in the corner, which she did, and she was not not hurt at that time when she was at that train station. So when they got to the shore in Germany, they were in East Germany now.
Yeah.
So of course, Berlin was split between East and West. They were on the east side of Germany, and they lived there from 1946 to 1948.
Yeah.
They were very poor, and she and her mother were living in a basement, and there was another lady living in the basement in Berlin with them. Or they were living really about 90 miles out of Berlin. But this lady took a 90-mile walk into Berlin because she had gotten some word that she wanted to check up on. Why? What was she going to check on in Berlin?
What was that?
When this lady friend that lived in the basement with you went to Berlin, what was she going to check on?
She was going to see if, because there were some, what should I say, people from Russia and from all over, they were getting into that bunker, and
So there was a big bunker in Berlin where a lot of people were.
yeah, there were people from different countries, and so she went there to see, maybe to check the names, and maybe she could find our father, and sure enough, the first time she was there, she was actually from Berlin. She was what should I say? She lived in Berlin, but she moved to the country, in the war. And she had family there in Berlin too. And then when she was checking there the first time, and then they said, yes, there was Otto Sprengel there, but he took off. He's not in now. And so she came home and she said, I found your dad is alive. He was there, he wasn't there, but he's not there no more. Your dad, well, but we knew that he was alive. And then the second time she went, it was maybe after a month or so, and she went there again, but she didn't tell us that she was going to go to Berlin. And I was sitting in the kitchen there and doing some sewing by the window, and I hear the door going, and I look, somebody comes in, and that was Mrs. Rocha, and the big old man was following her. And when I looked, it was my father. So my father was alive.
And how were you feeling right then?
I was crying. And I ran and hugged and kissed him.
And was he crying too? Yeah, I can't imagine.
So that was the time when I had my parents, together.
And what they learned was Alice's father had become very sick in Siberia, and so he had been sent to East Berlin. So while they were still in East Berlin, they talked to someone, and you can imagine everybody was talking about everyone to try and get families back together, but they talked to someone that was Martha's friend, and they gave Alice and the family Martha's address. She was then in West Berlin,
yes,
or West Germany, and
yes.
You wrote to her.
Yeah, I wrote to her, and she came then and visited me yet, but then she tried to get us over to the west of Germany.
Well, and as I understand, you wanted to get over to West Germany so that you would be free to leave Germany.
Yeah, we couldn't go from the east. We couldn't go from the east to Canada, so we tried to go to West Germany, and so we tried and we got over to the west, and we were in the west. I don't know exactly how long, but I know that was over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting plans made to come
Yeah.
to Canada.
Yeah, and we wrote here to Canada and to our family, and so that's how we got to Canada.
Alice wasn't sure of the details, but she remembers that it required another escape to get from East Berlin to West Berlin. And they made that escape. And then she remembers that one of her father's sisters, named Martha, who lived here in Canada, was the one who sent for them and said, you know, come here to Canada. And she sent them money to help them get to where she was living on a farm out between Pigeon and Wizard Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got on a train leaving from Bremen, Germany.
Yeah, Bremenhaven, yes.
Okay, and coming to Newfoundland, Canada.
Yeah, just a minute. I have to have the map yet, but it is by Newfoundland or someplace we landed, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, by boat.
Oh, an important thing we didn't say was once you got to West Berlin, you got reunited with your sister.
Yeah.
So then all four of you were back together again.
Yes, my dear.
And you all headed to Canada together, a
That's
reunited family.
Yes, yes.
And so after they got to Canada, they moved to the farm where Martha was. And then Martha had someone in mind for Alice. Who was it that you met? Who did Martha have you meet right after you got to Canada?
Oh, my husband, Ben. Yeah, he was very, he wanted to know what kind of people came from Europe, you know. So he came to visit my aunt, and, you know, I felt very, I don't know, I felt that people came to see us, you know.
Oh.
And so he came one evening and we met, and that was not the first. And he came after that. He came pretty near every evening because he didn't live far from my Auntie Martha's place.
And you came in February of 1950, and later that same year you married Benny.
That's right.
In December 21, 1950, Alice married Benny, and then she began her life here just outside of Edmonton. In 1973, I think it was, they moved to Edmonton.
Yes.
And that is the story of how Alice got from Poland to Edmonton.
Well, that is a pretty good story.
Yeah. We don't all have a life as exciting as your life, Alice.
Yes. Oh, man.